much, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great honor to be here on this conference and a great honor for me to stand here as the representative of Poland. My country has always put a special emphasis on protecting children and their rights at the domestic and international level. It was Poland that put forward, as we know, a draft of the Convention on the Rights of a Child at the UN Forum 45 years ago. And since 1989, this document has become the cornerstone of the child protection in all parts of the world. Yet, as we fully understand, legal norms are not everything. Concern over the fate of the youngest requires specific measures that must be taken both in the times of peace and in the times of emergency. The refugee crisis witnessed in the wake of Russia's aggression on Ukraine that affected women and children so severely was unprotected. Protecting a child, in particular against violence and sexual offenses, on the other hand, is some kind of responsibility that never ceases to exist. In recent years, Poland managed to address a number of shortcomings in this regard. In my speech, I will briefly outline measures taken by Poland in these two areas. And at the beginning, I would like to concentrate on children, refugees from Ukraine. As we know, at the beginning of the previous year, Poland and all countries of our region faced an enormous challenge. Millions of people fled the war-raged Ukraine. Europe experienced the largest refugee crisis since the end of Second World War. These were real refugees, mostly women and children fleeing a real threat, the opposite of economic migrants entering Europe through the Mediterranean Sea, the Balkans or Belarus. And after the outbreak of war, we found ourselves of the verge of humanitarian disaster risk, which actually never happened. The Polish state and the Polish society from the very first hours of the war provided help to the dozens of thousands of refugees who crossed the border every day. During the first 6 months of the war, the border between Poland and Ukraine was crossed by circa 5 million people. This number is equivalent to Ireland's population, for example. In the weeks of the largest influx, Hrubieszów, a district town in my region at the Ukrainian border, hosted more people than normally reside there every day. Since the beginning of the war, about 800,000 Ukrainian children have arrived in Poland. More than 1 million of women and children are still staying in Poland today. In the first weeks, providing emergency medical assistance, food, accommodation and transport was a priority for hundreds of thousands of people. Those were offered by governmental services and institutions, local governments, social organizations. In eastern Poland, it was first and foremost ordinary citizens who provided help. They spontaneously acted as volunteers at border crossing points and in support centers, or offered shelter for refugees in their own homes. So we did not need any camps for refugees. It was found that the massive influx of refugees did not need to mean a humanitarian crisis. Providing adequate access to education has become an enormous challenge after some weeks, some months of the beginning of the war. Right to education is of paramount importance, which is why we treated this seriously. We made it possible for Ukrainian children to attend Polish schools, and soon almost 200,000 avail themselves of this opportunity. We wanted to reduce language barriers, and for this reason each child, apart from regular classes, had access to 6 hours of the additional classes of Polish language per week. Children had a choice. They could choose a Polish school, or they could continue their education within the Ukrainian educational system by attending schools in their country remotely. Currently, almost 200,000 Ukrainian children attend Polish schools, accounting for 4% of all pupils in Poland. Ladies and gentlemen, immediately after the outbreak of the war, the Polish government introduced a special law on the support of refugees. We drafted legislation to ensure their legal stay in Poland, including temporary access to healthcare services, legal employment, and education for children. Comprehensive measures resulted in satisfactory outcomes. By now, more than 70% of adult refugees from Ukraine took up legal employment. Only 6% of refugees do not understand Polish, and as many as 23% are able to communicate in Polish in advanced level. We wanted to ensure that children's material status is stable until their parents find employment at the Polish labor market. Social benefits available to Polish citizens were temporarily granted to 500,000 of children. With almost 2 years passed by, Ukrainian families living in Poland have become economically independent, which is why their financial support is to expire in March next year. We are confident about their future. Financial support helped them survive the worst period and adjust to the new reality. And from the very beginning of the war, refugees were covered by a comprehensive and free legal aid. Those who fell victim to a crime are entitled to a free legal aid and psychological support. This is possible thanks to the network of 1,500 centers of free legal assistance and civic counseling, and about 300 centers that provide support to victims of crimes. Their works is coordinated by the Ministry of Justice. Ladies and gentlemen, during the migration crisis, borders are often crossed by unaccompanied children. This increases, of course, the risk of human trafficking. The Ministry of Family and Social Policy established a group responsible for coordinating the evacuation of children. The group evacuated children from Ukraine and found accommodation for them and their guardians within the territory of Poland. A special registration system was created to register Ukrainian children under custody or unaccompanied children. To ensure proper care from Ukrainian unaccompanied children, a concept, institution of a temporary guardian was introduced by a statutory act. A temporary guardian is appointed by a family court supervising the proper custody of a child. The temporary guardian takes care of the child's interests by the time the child attains the age of majority. And moving to the next area, the protecting children against violence, against sexual crimes, it's to underline that Poland would not be able to ensure Ukrainian children adequate protection if had not been for the profound reform of legislation aimed at protecting children against violence, against threats of such kind. And since 2015, we have been turning the Polish law more child-friendly and more effective in fighting against social pathologies to which the youngest fell victim. We want children to feel safe and we want to ensure that they know where to seek help if they need it. As the Deputy Minister of Justice, I have had the honor to directly influence the process of preparation and implementation of a number of such initiatives. The first one I would like to mention is so-called anti-violence legislation. In this area, Poland managed to effectively fight against the issue of domestic violence, or to be more precise, violence in relations. We rejected in this regard the gender ideology promoted by the Istanbul Convention, which Poland ratified at the end of the liberal government 2015. We considered its ideological assumption in some extent irrational, contrary to the common sense, wrong and harmful. Harmful to our national and Christian identity, and harmful to the victims. In Poland, the cause of violence is not traditional social rules of men and women or the religion, but alcoholism and other addictions. And in 2020, the so-called anti-violence law drafted by the Ministry of Justice entered into force, and it improved the system significantly. The police were granted additional powers to follow the examples of Austria and Czech Republic. The immediate order for removal of the perpetrator from the family home, along with the order prohibited to return, valid for 14 days, were introduced. These orders are issued in the cases of physical violence that possess a threat of life or health. The court may extend the order and at the request of victims. In the past, similar court procedure took months. while now it may be proceeded immediately. In 98% cases, the procedure protects women together with children in half of cases. In this manner, it was possible to break the vicious circle of fear and uncertainty among victims who were actually afraid of seeking help or who just ran away from home. We strengthen confidence in the state's in the state's agency among citizens. For the last 2 years, we have been witnessing, thanks to this legislation, among others, a downward trend in violence-related events and in some extent an increase in the use of police measures or criminal measures. This happened without, what is for us very important, without ideological strings attached and without abusing such measures. Another legislation, so-called anti-violence legislation 2.0, triggered a positive shift towards user-friendly access to a judiciary system for children and persons with special needs. I mean, in particular, persons with mental disabilities and speech impairments. To ensure that they have access to court, real access, we advocated for augmentative and alternative communication, ACC. We introduced a new mode of interviewing which allows for ACC methods. Children who participate in court proceedings will be given instructions and explanations written in a plain language, adjusted to their age. We know perfectly that qualified staff is the cornerstone of a successful legislation. For this reason, judges who interview children within a so-called child-friendly procedure attend obligatory training session led by experts in communication with children. Now I would like to mention so-called Little Camille's Law. In May this year, Poland was shocked by the death of little Camille, an 8-year young boy who was brutally murdered by his own stepfather. In spite of the number of signals reported, a child who was raised in a dysfunctional and pathological environment did not get help. Tragedies as this one has always sparked a burst of intensive but transient emotions, and this was usually it. This time was different. Thanks to our consistent work, we have identified a number of gaps within the system. This led to a law which was commonly referred as the Little Camille Law. It covers several dozens of measures to close legal loopholes that caused children's deaths in the past. The law established a normative framework for the system of protecting children against violence, in particular sexual violence. We implemented into the Polish legal order a serious case review, a proved procedure used in the United Kingdom. We analyze each case of a violent beating or death of a child to see where the system has failed. The analysis is conducted by a panel of experts trained in cooperation with UNICEF. If it occurs that a specific institution has failed to fulfill its obligation, we want to react immediately. We look for a weak link in the system. We prevent the recurrence of errors, and we prevent tragedies from happening again in the future. Parents must be sure that their children are safe when they are outside home. We introduce special procedures in institutions working with children to detect and react to any signs of violence, be it either from adults or first and foremost from peers. We want to ensure that children are safe whenever they study, relax, develop their skills, or undergo medical treatment. We imposed a certain obligation on employers to verify their employees in terms of criminal records, in particular so-called pedophiles crimes. We extended the scope of training for judges to equip them with skills necessary to talk to the victims of violence and to obtain evidence without causing additional trauma. Ladies and gentlemen, sexual offenses committed against children are an enormous problem of the contemporary world. The development of internet and access to it make children particularly prone to contact with inappropriate content. This is why we have developed the first national strategy to combat sexual violence against the youngest. We synchronize actions taken by state institutions, social organizations, and business to protect children. We opt for efficient and effective communication of institutions, public entities, and services. Each actor that identifies any content that is inappropriate for children will know how to proceed and where to report it. Removal of harmful content and holding perpetrators accountable will be easier than ever. The implementation of the strategy will be monitoring by the Group for the Protection of Minors created in the Ministry of Justice. The strategy is complementary in its nature. We fight against sex stalking, solicitation, or exposing children to erotic content. This covers not only the wide-ranging and effective plan for enforcement, but also prevention. We will ensure access to therapeutic or medical treatment for perpetrators and those who identify worrying dispositions in themselves. This applies mainly to convicted persons who should be still supervised by a specialist after serving their sentence and leaving prison. As part of prevention, we seek to introduce the assessment of probability of recidivism among convicts. The strategy is a result of broad cooperation and application of universal best practices. It was based on the model national response developed by We Protect Global Alliance that proved invaluable in this regard was the experience gained within the Polish-Hungarian Research Group and Eastern European Platform for Comparative Law. I would like to express my gratitude to the leaders and experts from the Ferenc Madl Institute, from the Central Academy, Central European Academy, cooperating with us closely for years, in particular in this area of child protection. What I would like to mention is that an important outcome of the work was making the society aware that sexual abuse against children is a problem of all environments, in particular artistic, sport-related, and those of social media celebrities. This is an important element of shifting the narrative decidedly imposed by the leftist or liberal media, according to which in Poland this was exclusively a problem of Catholic Church. This is not only about protecting the church against unjust attacks. This is primarily about the more effective protection of children whose harms have been beyond the liberal media's interests so far. Ladies and gentlemen, strategy and violence prevention are not everything. It's of course very important, but without the proper response of the state and strict sanctions imposed on demoralized perpetrators, children's safety would remain illusory. So that's why we strengthened criminal sanctions for sexual offenders, in particular when an offense is committed against a child. The previous existing legislation adopted under the influence of the liberal criminal law theory was focused more on the best interest of perpetrators than on the best interest of children. Just summarizing, it's to underline that we undergo major changes in difficult times. The pandemic, the economic crisis, and the war changed our perception of the world. It would appear that these tormenting events would deteriorate the situation of children and the extent to which their rights are protected. This is certainly not the case in Poland. Our legislative efforts bring fruitful results these days. Of course, we are still repairing and improving the system which used to fail the youngest so often. But the changes we introduce ensure protection to all children in the territory of Poland, also the refugees from Ukraine. And of course, we want to set increasingly higher standards for the safety of the youngest. And I believe that Poland, other countries of the region, of our part of the old continent, the heart of Europe, will remain a paragon of child protection and a source of inspiration for further changes. And I am sure that not only this conference, but all activities of the Central European Academy, of the Ferenc Madl Institute, in regard of the protection of children, is a very important part of this very important task. Thank you very much for your attention.